प्रातः स्मरामि हृदि संस्फुरदात्मतत्त्वम् सच्चित् सुखं परमहंसगतिं तुरीयम् यत् स्वप्नजागर सुषुप्तमवैति नित्यम् तद्ब्रह्म निष्कलमहं न च भूतसङ्गः तपोभिक्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणाम् मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते बोधोन साधनेभ्यो हि साक्षान्मोक्षैकसाधनम् पाकस्य वह्निवज्ञानं विना मोक्षो न सिद्ध्यति। Hari Om. We'll begin with a question. So a question आया था कल, which I thought I'll address because it's helpful. Question था, अर्जुन और दुर्योधन, अर्जुन एंड दुर्योधन, उनके गुण एक समान है, राजसिक हैं, उनका वर्ण एक समान है, क्षत्रिय है. So what is the difference? If you look at their personalities broadly, they are rajasic by nature, and they fall into the kshatriya varna. So what is the difference? I'm glad this question came. Remember, हमने कहा था, every human being is a combination of all three gunas. Just because you're rajasic by nature doesn't mean you only have rajas. Because you're rajasic, all it means is predominant. सबसे ज्यादा मात्रा में क्या है? रजस है. But तमस और सत्व का भी असर तो है. There is the effect of tamas and rajas in some quantity. Suppose you're 60% rajas by nature. The remaining 40%, what is it? Is it 30% tamas and 10% sattva? Is it 30% sattva and 10% tamas? It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. The same amount of rajas, पर rajas पे किसका अनुभव, किसका असर है? Rajas के ऊपर किसका effect है? Is it sattva का effect? What is the rajas painted by? देखिए, अगर blue color है, अगर blue color एक wall है, उस पे आप येलो डालो या फिर आप ग्रीन डालो, ब्लू के ऊपर आप ग्रीन डालो, और उसी ब्लू के ऊपर एक दूसरे पोर्शन पे आप रेड डालो. एक ही ब्लू वॉल के ऊपर एक साइड में आप थोड़ा ग्रीन पेंट करो और दूसरे साइड में आप रेड पेंट करो. क्या होगा? The result of one patch will be different from the result of the other patch. What is the predominant color? It is blue. But what is the secondary effect? Is it green or is it red? Big difference. So similarly, broadly speaking, Arjuna and Duryodhan were both rajasic by nature. And every human being, including Arjuna and Duryodhan, has both sattva in him and tamas in him. Sattva, rajas, tamas in some proportion or the other. But we see clearly that the effect of sattva in Arjuna was greater than tamas. We see that the effect of tamas in Duryodhana was greater than sattva. Duryodhana was heedless by nature. He didn't care about the consequences of his action. He was selfish by nature. So while he was predominantly Rajasic, the effect of tamas, the heedlessness, the selfishness, the I don't care attitude about others, that is what was influencing the Rajas. But in Arjuna, we see what was his first question. What was his first question to Bhagavan? Tell me, what is Shreyaha? Big difference. He says, I am confused, I am lost, my mind is in a mess. Tell me, what is Shreyaha? What is good for one and all? What should I do so that sabka kalyan ho? You and I have to commend Arjuna. He didn't ask, what will be helpful for me? He said, what is Shreyaha? What is good for one and all? So he was unselfish by nature. Duryodhana was egoistic by nature. Tamas. See, in different parts of the Gita, Bhagavan tries different techniques to influence Arjuna. And we have to give it to Arjuna. We have to give him the credit. He doesn't get satisfied with the egoistic techniques. Yes, maybe he's a little influenced. But when Bhagavan tries to convince him through egoistic arguments, oh, look what Janaka and all the other great warriors would do. Look at them. And what are you, Arjuna? Look at you. How can you fall? Had it been Duryodhan in Arjuna's position, maybe that argument would have worked. Maybe Duryodhan wouldn't have asked any more questions. Maybe that argument would have worked. That would have satisfied, because that would have hurt Duryodhan's ego. But we have to give credit to Arjuna. That didn't satisfy him. He wanted to gain more knowledge. He just wasn't happy with some egoistic treatment. A lot of us, if you want any work done from someone, you just have to flatter them. I'm sure you all know. That's a technique of getting work done. Just praise them a little bit. सर आपके बिना तो ये काम हो ही नहीं सकता. मैं आप पर निर्भर हूं सर, बस सब आपकी कृपा है. आपके मन में क्या चल रहा है? आपको उनसे काम करवाना है. वो आपके कॉन्ट्रैक्टर है, 4 दिन प्रोजेक्ट डिले चल रही है. आप काम कैसे निकलवाते हो? थोड़ा ईगो को मसाज करो उनका. So maybe Duryodhan would have fallen for that egoistic argument. Arjun didn't. So we see a clear difference. So while the predominant is Rajas, what is the other influence? Right? So it makes a big difference. If you ask me, jitne log hain, utne varn hain. Everybody is a different individual. No two people are the same. These are only broad classifications, because it's impossible to come up with 7 billion varnas. It's impossible to come up with 7 billion gunas. Broadly speaking, we classify the gunas into tamas, rajas, sattva. And broadly speaking, based on the composition of tamas, rajas, sattva, you fall into one of the 4 varnas. But if you ask me, even within the same varna, people have different proportions, right? So no two people are exactly the same. Broadly speaking, from practical point of view, we classify that. You and I, when dealing with individuals, should deal with their individual nature. Their varna is only for a broader understanding. But if you have to deal with a particular person, you have to get to the depth of their individual nature. So, heaven and earth, the difference between Arjuna and Duryodhana. Predominantly Rajasic, but what is the other influence, the secondary influence? That changes the whole thing, right? So we'll continue from where we left off. We've been discussing about karma, about action, about varna, about guna. And we reached that, the last topic that we discussed. In and through activity, where is your focus? Where is your thought? Is your thought on the result? Is it lost in bhoktritva bhavana? Is your thought on the actor, the doer of the action, in kartritva bhavana? The more you are lost in Kartritva Bhavna, the most self-conscious you will be. The more you are lost in Bhoktritva Bhavna, the more anxious you will be. We all feel anxious. We all feel self-conscious while performing action. कोई भी action, आप मुझे इस class को ले लो. I'm conducting this class. I'm speaking in front of 100 plus people. The extent to which my thought is on Bhoktritva Bhavana, I will be anxious. Oh, how will people receive it? Or will they enjoy it? To the extent to which I have my focus on the Kartritva Bhavana, on the actor, I will be self-conscious. Oh, what will they think of me? Or what opinion will they form of me? So the point is, in any action, we are lost in Kartritva and Bhoktritva Bhavana. But Bhagavan says, who is the yogi? One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction. Try to say it fast. Try to say it fast. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction. Swamiji used to give us this challenge. You have to say this one sentence without fumbling. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction. While performing the activity, where is the thought? Where is his awareness on the inactive principle? Bhagavan says before in verse number 13, he says, all these gunas are born of me, but I am inactive. I am akarmani. I do not perform any action. I am simply the enlivener. The petrol does not perform action of moving. The petrol simply enlivens the car to move. How well the car moves, where it goes, how powerful it is, petrol has nothing to do with it. Similarly, the Atman has nothing to do with the action. The Atman is akarmani, doesn't perform the action. The Atman is simply the enlivening principle. It is the inactive principle in action. It is what enlivens the action. It is what enables your body to act, your mind to feel, your intellect to think. It is that incredible power with which everything is enlivened. It is that incredible power by which everything is functioning. Everything is performing its actions. Atman itself doesn't perform any action. Brahman itself doesn't perform any action. That power, when we talk about within ourselves, that is making this individual function, we call it Atman. That same power, when we look at the world, when we look at पूरी सृष्टि को जब हम देखते हैं, इसे कौन चला रहा है, इसे कौन enliven कर रहा है, हजारों चीजें हिल रही हैं, मूव कर रही हैं, एक्शन परफॉर्म कर रही हैं, इंटरैक्ट कर रही हैं, इसे कौन चला रहा है? That inactive principle, enlivening action everywhere. That mystery, Atman, Brahman. That power without which this finger cannot move. That power without which this body cannot function. It cannot breathe. That power without which the stomach cannot digest. That power without which the eyes cannot see. That power without which the mind cannot feel. Every time you feel an emotion, every time you see something, we get lost in what we are seeing. We get lost in what we are feeling. We never think, what is it that's making me see? What is it that's making me feel? What is that inactive principle enlivening my action? What is that mystery? So yogi is one who doesn't get lost in what he is seeing. He doesn't get lost in what he is feeling. His attention, his awareness is on the inaction, is on the inactive principle. That power by which all actions arise. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction. One who is aware of the potential of the Atman. It can make a finger move. It can make the eyes see. It can make the cyclone come. It can make earthquakes happen. It is one that is enlivening every single action, every single activity. It is not limited to only your body. It is that incredible power by which everything is functioning. The potential in that inactive principle is infinite. one who has that awareness, one whose thoughts lie on this inaction, on this inactive principle. Such a person is a yogi. Who is a bhogi? A bhogi is one who is lost in what he is seeing. A bhogi is one who is lost in what he is experiencing, what he is feeling, joy or sorrow, lost in that. Pleasure or pain, he's lost in that. What is making him feel that pleasure? What is that power making him feel that pain? What is that pure consciousness by which he is conscious of perception, emotion, thought? One who brings his attention to this inactive principle, to that unseen hand making everything function. Such a person is a yogi. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhi. हम चांट करते हैं ब्रह्मार्पणम ब्रह्म हविः ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतम ब्रह्मैव तेन गंतव्यम ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना. Brahman is verily reached by him who sees Brahman in action, brahma karma samadhina. While in the middle of an action, that inactive principle that is functioning effortlessly, meticulously, constantly, supporting the action, enlivening the action. When a light is glowing, that electricity is effortlessly delivering. The moment the electricity says, I am done, I am taking a break, क्या होता है? Load shedding. When electricity doesn't reach the bulb, there is load shedding. Electricity is essential. Electricity itself does not glow, but it is what makes the bulb glow. It's what makes the AC cool. That enlivening principle. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam. By becoming aware of that enlivening principle, that inactive principle, verily shall you reach Brahman. By seeing, by observing, by becoming conscious of the unseen hand of God in every action, will you ultimately reach God? Will you ultimately merge with the pure consciousness? When you speak of this from the language of a bhakta, you'll say, seeing God in everyone, seeing God in everything. When you speak of the same idea from the lens, from the language of a jnani, brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. This is the language of a jnani, seeing Brahman in every action, seeing Brahman in every moment, in every transaction of life. Where is your focus? Is it on what you are experiencing or what is making you experience? What is illumining that experience? What is allowing that experience? And so based on that, this next portion of the Gita, the next 5 verses are incredible. How to turn every activity, every moment, every transaction of life into an awareness of God. How to turn every transaction into worship. How to treat every moment of life as a yajna. What is a yajna? An action through which you are aware of God. An action through which you become conscious. You bring your awareness to the higher. While performing the activity, where is your thought? On the higher. Where is your awareness? On the higher. Every activity is a yajna. So, before we start this portion, it's very important to understand the 3 essential aspects of a yajna. Remember, in a yajna, there is a havan kund. And into that havan kund, everybody offers the ahuti. The ahuti represents one's effort, one's individual effort. Interestingly, you perform ahuti with these fingers. This is how you offer ahuti, like this. The 5 fingers represent your individuality. The 5 fingers represent your being. Every individual is a composition of spirit and matter. The spirit in you is the Atman in you, the self in you. The matter in you is the material equipments. They are separate. The thumb is separate from the fingers. But They function together. The thumb is essential for functioning. Without the thumb, you won't be, your hands will be useless. Without the thumb, your hand will be useless. Your thumb is essential, yet it is separate. Similarly, your material equipments are useless without being enlivened by the Atman. The bulb is useless without being enlivened by electricity. Electricity is separate from the bulb. Spirit is separate from matter. But without their joint functioning, the matter equipments are useless. So this is your individuality, your spirit. This represents your body. This represents your mind. This finger represents your intellect. This finger represents your ego. Ego means the sense of identification. Right now, your ego is attached to your body, mind, intellect. Body, mind, intellect, ego. Your ego is attached to your body, mind, intellect. What is a Jnana Mudra? Very interesting. Jnana Mudra mein kya hota hai? You take this ego, separate it from the body, mind, and intellect, and join it with the Atman. What are you doing? What is this symbolic of? This is not literal. Don't take it literally. Ye karne se you won't transform as an individual. This is only symbolic. What's happening? Your ego, your sense of identification, your sense of I and my is separating itself from the individuality, your individual body, mind, intellect, and identifying, merging with the totality. Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi. You are not the body, you're not the mind, you're not the intellect. Tattvamasi, that self you are. And then when you join your ego with that, when you merge your identity with that self in you, you proclaim Aham Brahmasmi. I am not this body, not this mind, not this intellect. I am the self. So similarly, you offer ahuti like this. In any action you perform, you don't perform it with ego. So you don't keep the ego. What do? You take your mind and your intellect. When the mind and intellect function in sync, when your mind and intellect function in sync, if it's only intellect, it won't work. If it's only mind, it won't work. Only mind is madness. Only intellect is dry. Lacks enthusiasm, lacks energy. When mind and intellect come together with the Atman, that action becomes energized. That action becomes perfect. When the passion of the mind is guided by the knowledge of the intellect, enlivened by the Atman, it's a perfect offering. That's why in a yajna, the first important thing is the offering, the ahuti, your effort. What are you putting in? The second important aspect of a yajna is the fire. The fire represents the deity, one that you worship, your goal, what you want to merge with, what you want to reach. The fire represents that deity. And the third important thing in a yajna is the kindling of the fire, जो प्रज्वलित होती है अग्नि. आप जब आहुति डालते हो तो वो अग्नि प्रज्वलित होती है. That is the result of your offering. So remember these three aspects of a yajna, because the next 4 verses is a little technical in that sense. You have to remember this. Otherwise it won't make sense. आपको लगेगा क्या कह रहे हैं भगवान. So remember these 3 essential aspects of a yajna: the offering, the fire, the goal, and the kindling of the fire. Right? Now, what is the purpose of all of this? The purpose of all of this is verse number 24. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. By verily seeing Brahman in action, by seeing Brahman in every transaction of life, by becoming aware of that unseen hand, the God, the spirit in every transaction of life. That is the purpose. That is the purpose of the spiritual path. To shift your awareness, to pluck your awareness from the world and its entanglements and transplant it on God. A seeker went to a master. A seeker went to a master. Traveled very far, many days. He made that effort because he was wanting that knowledge. If you want this knowledge, you have to put in the effort. Nowadays, it's very easy to attend classes on Zoom, but that doesn't mean you can skip the effort. Back in the day, sincere students had to cross mountains, had to cross forests. So you have to put in the effort. So such a student reached a master, and the master was sitting in his ashram in the secluded forest. And what was he doing? He was gardening. आप लोग ने जो सबने जो gardening की होगी, so you all know what is transplanting. Initially, you plant things in a tray. छोटे छोटे पौधों में आप plant करते हो seed. और जब plants थोड़ी उग जाती हैं, then you take them out from that small tray and you transplant it. You transplant it, right? So the master, the guru, was doing that. He was simply transplanting, taking it from that small podha, from that small tree, and putting it into the ground or into a big podha. That's what he was doing. And itne mein student aaya, and usne kaha, Maharaj, Guruji, I really want Brahma Vidya. I really want knowledge. I really want to become spiritual. Please tell me the path. The Guru didn't reply. He kept doing, kept transplanting. 10 minute ruka, 15 minute ruka. Then he got a little impatient. Guruji, I've traveled very far. बहुत effort किया है मैंने. Please, बता दीजिए. I'm yearning to know from you. No response. One hour. 1 घंटा बीत गया. Guruji, I've come from so far. Please help me. I'm really desperate for this. I'm willing to sacrifice anything for this. Please tell me. After 1 hour, the Guru looks up. First time he's meeting the eye. And he says, I'm telling you, what is spirituality? I'm telling you for the last 1 hour what it is. Spirituality is nothing but transplanting your thought. It has nothing to do with the outside. Outside, you're performing the same activity. You're running the same business, being a part of the same family. But where is your thought? Spirituality is transplanting the thought, plucking it from the world and planting it in God, bringing your awareness in and through every activity. In the action, where is the thought? Is it on kartritva and bhoktritva bhavna, on the world, or is it on God? That is spirituality. When you're able to achieve that, and when you're able to function perfectly with the thought of the Lord in the back of the mind. See, you may ask, how is it possible? Kaise ho sakta hai? When the thought of the Lord is in the back of the mind and you're effortlessly functioning in the world. It's like a classical musician. A classical musician क्या करते हैं? पीछे में श्रुति होती है, वो basic जो note होती है. That's a singular tone, singular note, and it has to be very specific. And अपने आप को उस श्रुति से ट्यून करके classical musician क्या करते हैं? They play innumerable chords. They play innumerable tunes and notes. But where is the focus? Where is the thought? Where is the awareness planted of that classical musician? He plays innumerable songs, innumerable notes, distinct and different, a variety of actions he performs. But where is the focus? On the Shruti. And if the focus shifts from the Shruti, he's unable to perform. His action gets spoiled. This is exactly how a spiritual person lives. Like a classical musician, his thought, his awareness at the back of his mind is on the self. His mind doesn't get lost into the various tunes. His thought is planted on that Shruti, on that awareness of God, and he functions in the world. So transplanting your thought from the world and bringing it to God, in and through every activity, while performing any action, That is spirituality. And that is the purpose of the yajnas. How to turn every transaction, every activity of life into yajna, into a worship, into an awareness of God. So this is what the next 4 verses say. The next 4 verses. There are 3 transactions in life, and they'll cover the 3 transactions. The first is the receipt of stimuli from the world. When you're out in the world, पहली चीज क्या होती है? आपको वर्ल्ड से स्टिमुलाई रीच होती है. Your ears receive sound, your eyes receive sight, your nose receives smell, your skin receives touch, your mouth receives taste. It's a receipt of stimuli. It's the world entering you, the receipt. Second thing, the reaction of the stimuli. When the stimuli reaches you, within you, in the mind, there's a reaction. If you have desires, there is a strong reaction. If you don't have desires, there is little or no reaction. Remember, I gave the example. When you read a newspaper and you're reading the politics page, suppose you're interested in politics, what will you do? You'll be glued to it. Huh? You'll be glued. You'll want to read every detail. So there'll be a strong reaction within you, in your mind, a strong desire to read. But if you're not interested in politics, if you're not interested in the business page, what will happen? There'll be a receipt, Business Standard, Economics Times. There'll be a receipt of stimuli, but no reaction. You will just glance through it. So if there's no desire, no strong desire, there'll be barely any reaction. But where there is a desire, there'll be a strong reaction. And based on the reaction, there will be a response. There will be an external action. See, receipt of stimuli is internal action. Reaction of the stimuli is internal action. Then the response is an external response. So these are the, broadly speaking, every moment of life, you're going through these 3 transactions. Life, your outer action is only number 3. It's only 1/3 of your experience. 1 and 2 are equally important, if not more important. What's happening within you? Where is your awareness when all of these are happening? So the next 4 verses give us precisely how to remember the Lord, how to bring your awareness to Brahman in and through 1, 2, 3. In and through receipt, reaction, and response. So we'll take up with that thought, we'll take up the next verse number 25. Daivamevapare yajnam yoginah paryupasate brahmajnavapare yajnam yajnenaivopajuhvati Daivamevapare yajnam yoginah paryupasate brahmajnavapare yajnam yajnenaivopajuhvati. कई योगी जन देवताओं के लिए ही यज्ञ करते हैं और दूसरे ब्रह्म रूपी अग्नि में यज्ञ की ही आहुति देते हैं. Some yogis perform sacrifice to the gods. Others perform sacrifice itself into the fire of Brahman. Others perform sacrifice into the fire of Brahman. This is a very deep verse. Very, very, very deep verse. We'll spend the next 10 minutes on it. अगर ये regular class होता या फिर अगर हम ये आश्रम में पढ़ते होते, we would have spent 1 whole day on this verse. It's a very significant verse. This is the first 2 yajnas. It talks about your goal in life. First, before stepping out into the world, before receiving, reacting, and responding, what is very important is to attune yourself to your goal in life. What is your goal? What is my goal? He says, some yogis perform sacrifice to the gods. Remember, the gods represent the variety of functions of the world. The gods represent the variety of functions, the variety of powers in the world. They are the manifestation of that one Brahman in the world. In the aspect of knowledge, manifest as Saraswati. In the aspect of wealth, manifest as Lakshmi. In the aspect of success, manifest as Ganesha. If you're seeking success in your field, in your endeavor, you will perform sacrifice to the gods. If you're seeking depth of knowledge and clarity and learning, you will perform sacrifice to Saraswati. If you're seeking wealth and prosperity, you will perform sacrifice to Lakshmi. So the sacrifice to the gods represents the innumerable worldly pursuits. The beauty of this tradition is that it has divinized the worldly also. It has divinized the worldly also. In no other tradition is the worldly divinized. In every other tradition, the worldly actions are criticized, are rejected, are judged. This is the one tradition where worldly actions are also divinized. Why? Because the sages, the saints, the great thinkers of the past realized what is forced is never forceful. What is forced is never forceful. You can't force the mind out from the world. It will not last. You cannot force your child to study. It won't work. You have to attract it to study. You have to attract the mind to God. You cannot force the mind away from the world and plant it on God. It will get frustrated. Rather, where is the mind going? आपका मन कहाँ जा रहा है? It's going to wealth. It's going to success. It's going to knowledge. It's going to health. It's going to innumerable things in the world. जहां जहां आपका मन जा रहा है, वहां इन ऋषियों ने भगवान को प्लांट कर. They divinized every aspect of the world. They divinized every pursuit of the world. They divinized your worldly pursuits. So even when you're performing a worldly action with worldly motives, what are you doing? You're remembering God. Some way or the other, you're remembering God. That way you don't become completely lost. There is still some hope. If you are completely lost in the pursuit of wealth, you develop arrogance, you develop envy, you develop jealousy. But when you do it as a worship to Lakshmi, what do you say? I'm serving you, O goddess. I'm serving you. I'm doing my part. Whatever you give me, I will accept gleefully. I will accept gratefully. Whatever wealth you bring me, wealth, it's still worldly. But you've divinized the worldly. You've developed a spirit of devotion, of dedication, of surrender in your worldly action. There is still hope for you to be peaceful, to be prosperous. So, divinizing even the worldly pursuits. That's the first yajna. It talks about the mundane goals in life. Even for mundane goals, you have to perform yajna. You have to perform actions in the spirit of service and sacrifice to a higher goal, to the gods. But if you want to push yourself spiritually, if you want to reach the ultimate goal, you have to go beyond these mundane goals. That's the second part of this verse. There are some yogis perform sacrifice to the gods. Others perform sacrifice itself. They offer sacrifice itself in the fire of Brahman. Who is the fire? Who is the God? Who is the deity? Beyond all the worldly manifestations of Brahman, Brahman itself is the deity. Brahman itself is the goal. I am not interested in anything that the world has to offer. Wealth, health, power, name, fame, success, nothing. What I want is one thing and one thing alone. I want self-realization. That is the mumukshatva you need to have as a seeker. And so when you have that goal, what is the process to reach that goal? You have to sacrifice itself. Others sacrifice itself. When you have that absolute ideal of self-realization, of moksha, of liberation, you have to sacrifice. You have to offer sacrifice itself. The very feeling of sacrifice, the very thought of sacrifice, that entire kartritva bhavana. See, when your goal is worldly and you're performing unselfish action, in any unselfish activity, you still have the feeling, I am sacrificing. I am doing. If you want to push yourself further to the next level of spirituality, if you want to go beyond worldly success, worldly achievement, to spiritual achievement, what do you have to offer? What do you have to sacrifice? What is the ahuti you have to put into the fire? You have to put in the ahuti of sacrifice itself. That feeling, I am sacrificing, I am doing. You have to become an instrument of action. You have to have the feeling, the Lord is functioning through me. I am not doing anything. I am not sacrificing anything. Am I giving this knowledge? Is it my knowledge to give? Am I sacrificing my time to share knowledge with you? Simple thought. This is what Bhagwan has designed me to do. This is the capabilities Bhagwan has given me. It is Bhagwan functioning through me, sharing this knowledge. The knowledge is not mine. This learning is not mine. This mind itself, it's been gifted to me. This mind has become capable of learning. This mind has gained knowledge, and this mind is passing on the knowledge. I am simply the instrument. I am simply the vehicle. That thought, sacrificing sacrifice itself. I am not the doer. No feeling of doership. So if you want to reach spiritual perfection, beyond worldly success, beyond sacrificing to the gods, the absolute goal of self-realization, in that you offer sacrifice itself into the fire of Brahman. That goal of Brahman. So, first of all, before stepping into the world, determine your goal in life. Is it Yajna 1 or Yajna 2? Is it Yajna 1 or Yajna 2? And then comes perception. And then as you step into the world, comes receipt of stimuli, the first transaction. Remember, receipt, reaction, response. Receipt of stimuli, reaction within, and response back to the world. This is the three transactions you're doing. How do you remember God? How do you bring your awareness to God? How do you see inaction? Inaction. In and through all these transactions. That's what we take up in verse number 26. We'll chant it today. We'll discuss it tomorrow. But it's very important to chant 26. Shrotradirindriyananye samyamagnishu juhvati shabdadin vishayananye indriyagnishu juhvati Shrotradirindriyananye samyamagnishu juhvati shabdadin vishayananye indriyagnishu juhvati. कई एक श्रोत्रादि इंद्रियों को संयम रूपी अग्नियों में आहुति देते हैं तथा कई शब्द आदि विषयों की इंद्रिय रूपी अग्नियों में आहुति देते हैं. Others offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. Others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice into the fires of restraint. One second, there is a little bit of a typo. Anyway, I'll correct it. I'll correct it tomorrow. No worries. So this is talking about the yajna of perception and the yajna of restraint. First, when there is a receipt of stimuli into you, there is perception happening. When sound enters you through the ears and somehow reaches the mind, what happens? That sound, you become aware of the sound. You become conscious of the sound. Perception occurs. Where is your thought during the perception? He says, others offer sound and other sense objects, other sense receipt into the fires of perception. into the fires of perception. I'll correct that. It shouldn't be that. So when perception is happening, when stimuli is entering you and perception occurs, where is your thought? If you get lost in the perception, if you get lost in what you are hearing, what you are seeing, you've lost it. You've got involved and entangled in the world. But if you maintain your awareness, what is making me hear? What is making me see? What is that which is enlivening this perception? You are praying to the deity. What have you offered to the deity? You've offered stimuli. And what is the result? Perception. You're simply praying to that deity, that enlivening principle that is enlivening this transaction, enlivening this process. The receipt of stimuli and the ahuti of stimuli and the kindling of perception. In and through this transaction, where is your awareness? The yajna of perception bids you become aware of what is making you hear, not what you're hearing. What is making you see, not what you're seeing. When you are managed to do this, you become spiritual. When you get lost, when you get pulled, the mind will naturally get entangled in what you are hearing, what you are listening to, what you are seeing. That's when you have to bring your intellect, bring your awareness back. That's the restraint you have to practice. That's the regulation you have to practice. And that is what we will discuss starting tomorrow. Tomorrow, the last day of our class, we will hopefully cover this portion of the yajnas. And with that, we will be equipped to try and bring our awareness to Bhagwan in and through every transaction of life, in and through every moment of life. How do we practice these yajnas? That's what we will discuss tomorrow in class, same time, same place. So see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. on Zoom. With that thought, Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.